This is a 1962 aerial photo of the Pinnacle, and it shows a number of landmarks and structures that I think will give a good orientation to the history of the Pinnacle. Right here is the Pittsfield Water Tower that was placed there in 1894 when Pittsfield established its waterworks system. And you can't see the printing, but it said Pittsfield Waterworks. And it became a landmark that could be seen easily from the interstate, identifying our town. Right next to it, right here, this little structure is where the tow is housed, and this is the tow line that you see, this line going down. Right here was the original jump. You would go down the jump, run along the land, and then there would be a lip, and there'd be the run out, and you would end up down at the base of what is currently the bunny slope. Over here are several large pine trees that just came down a couple years ago that were kind of places to give kids an idea of how far they could ski. Like an instructor would say, you're allowed to go to the first tree or the second tree. Kind of like what you'd have lifelines with in swimming pools to give you designated areas of where you could go. This right here was the little hut that was there for a few years, and down here is the skating rink, which just got rehabilitated last year. It's had a right here you can see a concavity, which is the bowl that didn't show up very well at all in the earlier video, but again you can see it does look like a bowl. So kids do ski from the top down through the bowl or around either edge. The main slope looks pretty much the same today, except an area has been cut over in this place for snowboarders. Well, actually anyone goes down through it, but the snowboarders would use it. It's kind of like a tunnel down there. And as you notice, it's all wooded here. There's currently a trail from the top that goes down and runs out this way. This little area here that's white actually had some degree of verticality in it, but that got leveled and is fairly flat. Again, there is that trail that runs through the woods and comes out onto the main slope. This is one of the large trees that was taken down that was kind of a landmark for instructors to be able to tell how high up a student could go according to their ability. This tree was removed years and years ago. This is that original warming hut, and it was fairly small. You could just go in and get warm. The current hut that later replaced it is over in this area. In the foreground here you can see some slalom poles for racing, but this gives you a good idea of what that original hut looked like. Zeroing in on that 1962 Sentinel photo, like I said, you can see the current hut before it was enlarged, I believe in the 80s, and you can see the skating rink that I mentioned earlier, which has been rehabilitated and functioning again since last year. You can even see skaters on this photo. This is a photo of the first ski school. Over here is Bud Dow, who was instrumental in the development of the ski slope. I'll get onto him more later. In the background you can see a hill here, and this is the hill that I spoke about earlier where it was flattened out. It wasn't very steep, but it was a good place to start some beginners. Again, this is the first ski school, and this would have been in the mid-50s. Racing started pretty early. Here we have a group of skiers down, lined up, ready to get onto the toe. And here would be the timekeepers. Bud Dow is the man standing here with probably the charts to log the times. And again, here's that original warming hut and probably parents watching to check on their skiers. Here's a close-up of some of the racers. As you can see, they have the pennies with their numbers to designate what skier they are. The clothing's quite different from today. We didn't have the heavy ski jackets. A lot of folks skied in sweaters and extremely light shells, little light nylon shells. And as you can see, I don't think anyone there has ski pants, maybe one or two kids. But the clothing was much different, as was the equipment. I was fortunate that my mother clipped columns from the Pittsfield Advertiser called Ski Chatter. This was written by Jack Baxter, who was instrumental also in getting the ski slope going in Pittsfield. His column dated January 20th, 1955 gives a wonderful overview of what the origin of the ski slope was. Actually, it was called the Kiwanis Club ski slope initially because that club is the one that took this on as a major project. I believe this probably was in the Sentinel. Here is a good shot of the slope, and again, here's Bud Dow with these very long skis here. This is Jimmy Homestead, whose brother is Dean of Bud's Shop and Save, and this was the Madden girl who is no longer in this area, but this was Jimmy Homestead. This shows them at the Union Hall, which is, or was, where the current municipal building is. We had lessons in the hall. We'd put on our skis and walk around on the wood floor so that we had some feeling of what it was like to have those strapped to our feet. And as you can see, some of these skis are pretty long. Let me just read a little bit of the ski chatter from Jack Baxter. Let me focus on Jack and try and read this. A dream has come true. A scant 60 days ago, the east side of the Pinnacle was a densely wooded slope inhabited only by a partridge family whose nest was at the base of one of the many good-sized trees, well protected in the heavy underbrush on the lee side of the hill, with apple trees above and water below for food and drink. Then it was very tentatively suggested to the Kiwanis Club that they might like to build a ski hill. Several of the members were particularly interested in skiing, and the rest saw a chance to further the work of the club, which emphasized the benefit to the children and young people of the town. So building a ski hill became an established club project. Bud Dow, not a club member but a fellow townsman with lots of skiing experience, joined the project and became the chief engineer. And what an engineer he turned out to be. Bud brought to the project a wonderful combination of experience, imagination, skill, and a terrific willingness to sacrifice his personal time and energy for the development of the project. Nobody except Bud's family will ever realize the many hours of hard work which he devoted to carry the project to successful conclusion. A lot of people did a lot of work off and on here and there, but for about 8 weeks Bud did little else in what few hours he had except work on the ski hill and the various buildings and toe. Without Bud, we might have had a cleared strip of ground, but we certainly would not this year have had the toe, warming hut, and toilets, and all of that he achieved mainly through hard work. As mentioned earlier, the old trestle near the top by the standpipe or tower was replaced by this large structure for jumping. This is on the bowl side. it was part of some of the jumping for MCI ski team, and as well as the Bud Dow races. Here you see Bud overseeing a skier coming down off that jump, and there are annual Bud Dow races. You can see all the events here listed: jumping, downhill, slalom, cross country, and awards were given out for first, second, third place. And here's Bud with his wife Alma, who also was key in the development of the Pinnacle, particularly in ski instruction, with Barney McGowan, who is still here in town, who had been very active in the club for a number of years. If you're wondering what these racers are doing, they are packing the slope. It would be a number of years before the Pinnacle would purchase a packer. And for skiing after fresh snow, we would have to sidestep up and down the hill at least 2 times before we could ski. In later years, there was a packer that sometimes would break down, and the club would connect with the snowmobile club, and they would help pack by running snowmobiles up and down the slope. Currently, we have a reliable packer, and Ed Hodgins is very capable in terms of packing this main side as well as the bowl. In 1978, Ann McGowan did a wonderful full-page spread for the Morning Sentinel about the Pinnacle ski program. This was the year that children were added that were preschool age. Prior to that time, it was only school-age children. And here you can see a number of kids ranging in age from 1.5, I believe, to 4. And like I said, prior to that time, mothers would have to teach their kids after they'd been out on the slopes, teaching other people's children. And it was felt that it'd be easier if they could all be in one class, and that they might actually listen to an instructor better than their own mother. This is me with my son Vaughn on the toe, and like I said, this article was done in 1978, and the Pinnacle since has had just a number of preschoolers all over the slope skiing quite ably. So this was introduced that year. And again, Ann McGowan, Barney's wife, did a wonderful article for the Sentinel. In 1981, the hut was nearly doubled in size with the addition of the Bud Dow room. Here is a close-up of some of the folks working on it. These are volunteers of the club that put this together. And here's Alma Dow being presented with recognition for her husband, who is deceased, by Pat McGowan. That's Ann and Barney's son. So that new addition is the Bud Dow room. Another full-page spread in the Sentinel, this time done by Terry Stanley. And this is about Terry DeNatale coaching MCI ski team. She is from the famous Nelson family from the Midwest. Her younger sister earned a bronze at, I believe it was Sarajevo, in the Winter Olympics. Terry herself was on the national ski team. She was the wife of Dr. Joe DeNatale, but she was the coach at MCI for several years. We were very fortunate to have her. But again, a big, long piece written about the Pinnacle. And over here, in early 80s, Bub London is shown here with the club president, Bill Orr. And he raced nationally at the junior Olympic level and won the downhill. Here's a shot of him racing. They're standing in the Bud Dow room. Unfortunately, the reflection on that glass doesn't show Bud very well, but This is the Bud Dow room where there's a large fireplace, stone fireplace. That was the new addition. In 1993, Charlie Quist, who grew up skiing on the Pinnacle, raced in New Zealand for their national handicapped ski championships and won 3 medals. He won a gold and 2 silvers. Charlie was in the category for being affected both arms and legs. Charlie had broken his neck like 4 times and has spastic quadriplegia, which means the tone in his arms and legs varies and is often quite high and tight. He had hoped to make the Olympics. I don't know what happened to Charlie after his trip to New Zealand and winning so many medals. This is a clear shot of the water tower, probably taken turn of the century, 1900 time frame, and you can see the trees have grown immensely since that time. I wanted to tell you about the tank and its demise. It was felt that it was becoming unsafe. It had sprung some leaks, very small pinhole-like leaks, but nevertheless the town was worried about the stability of it, and I'll show you a picture of its condition before it came down. And it would have cost quite a bit, I guess, to fix it, repair it, paint it. And what happened was folks thought that they would be able to pull it over. And then I don't know if they thought they'd roll it down the hill or what, but it ended up snapping 2 cables. It made TV news. It showed one of the times it snapped the cable, but the tank went actually from a circle to an oval and then back before it snapped the cable. It was pretty amazing. The man that took it down ended up having to take it down by blowtorch with cutting pieces, probably 5 feet by 18 inches, and then get the pieces down the slope. The club was concerned about the condition of the slope, but he did a good job with that. There used to be a question, did the pigeons face in or face out when they were on the rim? As you may have remembered that early photo that I showed you, that aerial, there was no cover for this tank. This is a photo of a card that was given by the Deemer family in memoriam to Jean Deemer, who did this watercolor. They gave it as a donation for a fundraiser and in memoriam of Jean. On the back of the card it reads, "In Pittsfield, Maine, Winter Fund focuses on the Pinnacle Ski Slope. Volunteers, many who have never skied, donate countless hours to raise funds, groom slopes, tend the rope tow, make repairs, give lessons, organize races, maintain a snack bar, and heat a large lodge. The Pinnacle produces good skiers, but more important, fosters warmth and spirit in a special town in central Maine. Use of this card helps support that effort." These are typically sold at the Pinnacle and usually around Christmas time at Bud's courtesy counter.